All right, so you're reading a book called Choose Your Enemies?
Yeah. Choose your enemies wisely. That's the gist of the book.
Okay.
So, yeah, one of the things he was talking about was, too many people, you look for a drive. Or, sometimes you want to make it in business or whatever endeavor you take on to prove others wrong, so to speak. All the haters and all that. Well, he was saying that once you've beaten particular enemies, you need to move on to bigger and better enemies, right? That was kind of the gist of the book, and he went deeper into that topic. But I know I'm guilty of it. I spent time people that I've already beaten, and I'm still focused on them. Like, oh yeah,
I have an equivalent, but I want to hear that.
okay. Well, I don't want to get too personal because they'll probably know who we're talking about.
As much as you can share without.
Yeah, without putting, because again, I don't want to put anyone on blast either. That's not the intention either, right? Because I don't necessarily look for enemies. I try to be as diplomatic and professional as I can with people, and I used to have a real bad temper when I was younger, and it was, right away just anger, emotion, ego.
I didn't show it much, but so that I would get angry.
So,
I wouldn't show it, but I would get angrier too when I was younger.
For nothing, right? Over.
Huh. I don't know. I noticed I would be more reactive, and I just noticed it now because I'm working with younger people.
Yes.
And I just, by comparison, I realized, oh, that's how I used to be.
Yes. So I have a position now, kind of mentoring some younger guys, and they're in their 20s, and I see a lot of myself in them now, and I just look back and man, it's ridiculous, just ridiculous. But there was no one there for me to gravitate towards in those environments to pull me out of that mindset. And so just with a few words to these kids, and they start thinking differently. Say, oh, I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
And right away they calm down.
I think it helps if somebody not too much older than them says it too.
Yeah.
Like their dad can't say that.
No.
Because they'll just fight back against it.
Because I deal with my own children like that, right? I can tell them something, and yeah, they hear me, but until they see me do it, or they see one of their peers or someone else do it, then they think it's a great idea.
Yeah, you're not cool.
Yeah, not cool enough. I mean, they look at me at fairly cool. I'm a fairly cool dad, but still, there's an age gap. There's a generational gap, of course. And so, especially my oldest, he's Mr. Cool Guy now, and I see a lot of myself in him. So, I have a way to approach him that's different than others. Because, I know what he's going through, and kind of his, not really fitting in. He fits in just fine, but I need him to just not focus so much on fitting in that circle, because there's other circles in the world, right? Just because you think you're cool in one area, or this means the world to you today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, are you still going to care about that same circle? Maybe going back to enemies as well. It's the same thing.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, what is that that conflict or whatever that you learned to let go of, or that enemy that you learned to try to stop beating?
I mean, whether it's professional life or, you see some people, especially in my industry, they come and go. I mean, our failure rate in the industry that I'm in is pretty high. It's a high 90% in your first 3 years, if not higher.
Yeah.
A lot of people do it part-time. A lot of people do it as a side hustle, which it really doesn't work that way for most. And so you get people that come in and talk really big, and they might be successful for a year or two, depending on the market as well. And then you see them just fall off, just completely disappear.
So do you have when you said that, did you have somebody in mind?
Of course, yeah. There's a few.
If you could namelessly choose one, and then if you could choose one specific conflict that you had with them that you decided to let go because whatever, you had moved on, it sounds like. Or you had to let it go to move on?
Yeah, I mean, there was a specific conflict which, it was many conflicts, but, the biggest thing, too, is choosing your enemies wisely, but also choosing your mentors wisely.
Okay.
And sometimes and I've been guilty of that kind of, I don't want to say blind loyalty, maybe a little bit naive too, before I started really going deeper into the business. You know, you gravitate towards some people, you think you want to do what they're doing because they're successful, but when you look deeper, you know, again, 10, 20, 30 years from now, do you want to be like that person? And if the answer is no, you may want to look at another mentor. You may want to look at someone else to follow in their footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
And not just in a professional way of life, but with everything. You know, you need to have a strong mind. You need to have a strong body. Just because someone has a lot of money, but they're completely out of shape, you know, maybe that's shallow, but I don't respect it the same.
Okay. Let me ask you, because I have one person in mind, which you told me about before, who was a former mentor in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think your first one. And you said he helped you, but he was also shady and maybe kind of screwed you in the end. Is that somebody you were thinking of?
That's one of them for sure. It's one of them for sure. And that one, that specific one I told you about, that one hurt the most because I was, again, blindly loyal. So I wasn't really so much worried about myself. And I'm actually kind of thankful that those things happened because it forced me to go out on my own and do my own thing. But, you know, there was things that were done not the way that I would have done them.
Can you be more specific?
I know, I'm trying to be very very vague with it. But basically, I mean, you know, my thing is, especially with clients, you know, I treat clients not as a transaction, right? In my business, it's a little bit different. It's your client in real estate, to be specific. Yeah, you're in other things too, but in real estate specifically, you know, you spend a lot of time with these people. You really get to know them. You get to know their flaws and things that come out because it's a very stressful time. You know, they're dealing with a lot of money, a lot of hard work to get that money, whether it's selling their home or buying their home. It's very stressful, and so you really get to know them at their lowest point, at their highest points throughout the whole transaction, and you kind of become their almost like a therapist in a sense, because they lean on you for everything. And so I take that trust, you know, very serious and to heart. And so I don't want to just look at them as one deal, one paycheck. I want them to trust me with their family members, their friends. So when they send me referrals, they know that they're going to be taken care of. I'm not just going to, you know...
You don't want to be the used car salesman of real estate.
Yeah, exactly. Which, you know, I had a short stint in car sales too. And there's a lot of good, you know, it's kind of funny because used car salesmen and realtors, attorneys, none of us really have a good reputation. So we're really trying to change that, you know, because there's a lot of good used car salesmen too. I know a lot of them personally, but that's become kind of the reputation of them, unfortunately. You know, just, oh, he's out there just selling whatever just to make a buck. And so we're really working as a team to try and change that and become something better, you know, where you look at us as a trusted resource.
Here, let me tell a story of mine, and maybe that'll help you jog something, because I'm trying to draw something out of you, and maybe I'm not being specific enough.
Hit me with some questions.
So when you first said choose your enemies, and sometimes you have to choose to not engage with certain enemies so you can progress to the next level.
Yeah.
So in the Bible, there's a story, or Jesus said, it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get to the kingdom of heaven. And so it's like a very big thing trying to get through a very small thing.
Yeah.
And in my conflict with my dad, it wasn't like an argument. It just, our two dispositions toward each other were just fundamentally incompatible. I didn't like the way he thought, he didn't like the way I thought, and I was too immature to try to understand him, and maybe you could say he was too proud to try to understand me, because I was his son. And I always resented him for not like listening to me, for being a jerk, for like his condescending attitude, and all these things that I held against him. I wanted him to like recognize that they were wrong and answer for them, like to apologize for it. And I thought, like, I don't want to move on until I get that acknowledgement, because what, do I just let it go and he wins? Like, that thought was so disgusting to me, so like poisonous, so sour, just every bad feeling was like, I can't let that go, because then he wins, this like villain who was just such an asshole. If I let that go, he wins, and I cannot allow that. And for some reason, after a while, the image of like a rich man trying to get into the kingdom of heaven, I imagined like the camel going through the eye of needle, like a rich man is like maybe himself small enough to scoot through some little hole, but he's got this whole luggage full of like possessions that he won't let go. And for me, like, I had like a whole suitcase full of resentments, where like the kingdom of heaven was on the other side of this wall with this little hole, and I couldn't fit through, because like I don't want to let go of these resentments, because then he wins. But after a while, like it just became, the mathematics of the situation became so clear. Like, so I'm gonna stay in hell, so I can maybe win one day, instead of abandoning that, cutting that loss, losing that battle, so I can get into heaven and win the war, so to speak.
Because what will that victory, so to speak, get you? And
here's on the other side, now that like my dad's passed away, unfortunately, I kind of wish all this would have happened while he was still alive, so we could enjoy that relationship. But that's my perspective on the other side of the wall now. Like, those resentments, they're like that's like a fight that happened in kindergarten. Just so long ago. I didn't like it. I wouldn't want to do it again, but the importance of it is so small. Now that I'm on the other side of this wall, and it was worth it to let that go. And he did win. What, like a little like Monopoly game of resentment? So just in case we missed anything, we're talking about choosing enemies and letting go of battles that you can't win.
And engaging with people that again, if you're engaging with people in the comment section, which I think we've all been guilty of. When you're engaging with those people, most of the time those aren't winners. And the fact that you even give them the time of day to engage, they feel like they won. Because that's what they're doing. They're just trying to draw you out. Because that's what social media, that's kind of one of the negatives of social media, is everyone has a voice. Even people that, necessarily shouldn't. And, they're out there spouting out their intelligence, but really they have no idea what they're talking about. And I saw that, we launched, my daughter actually made me launch a TikTok, real estate related.
Really?
I didn't really want to engage with that, but whatever, we started it. And, you get a lot of positive comments. Oh, that's funny, great. And then you get this random comment from some random user, user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever.
That was me.
I could tell. No, just arguing, just very argumentative stance. And you look at their profile, and where's your videos? Where's your content? So you have the time to come into mine and say something negative. Not anything, there's a difference between criticism. Give me some constructive criticism. Okay, I'll take it. But there's nothing constructive, and your whole point, your whole take on the topic is wrong. It's incorrect. And I've been doing, especially in real estate, I've been doing real estate long enough now where I can spot the ones that know what they're talking about and the ones that have no clue. But yet, those are the ones that are commenting. And you can't stop it, but just don't engage with it.
I've noticed I'm most willing to talk about things I don't know much about. And the things I do know about, like, I'm so good not talking about them because I got nothing to prove.
There's nothing, exactly.
But even knowing that, I still notice that tendency that I have.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, is a lot of people just want validation. And maybe that goes back to the ego aspect of it, but they just want to be validated, they want to be heard. And another thing that happened, like during the COVID with the lockdowns and everyone was going remote, people forgot how to have conversations, how to even talk to each other. So they're talking at each other versus to each other. I've noticed a lot of that too. And we had just recently we had a deal that right out of the gate, I saw the screenshot of the text messages, And just right away I could tell. I was like, well, this client's going to be a pain because right out of the gate, she thinks she is running the show. She thinks that she knows everything that, how to do this. She's never done it before, but yet she has all this information and all this knowledge from somewhere. And so she's going to be in for a rude awakening when she misses out on a couple deals, and then maybe we'll bring her back to the table. But just from the very first message, I take a look at it and right away, really?
So how do you handle that situation?
You have to, you have to slow it down. You don't talk over them, either. That's the other thing is a lot of people in sales, a lot of ways that they miss out on a sales, they start talking over and trying to prove the client wrong.
Yeah.
My job's not to prove them wrong. My job's to help them do what they want to do. So whether that's purchase a home, sell a home, or another aspect of business, we're just there to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just have to slow it down, go back to the systems and processes that we set in place, and move forward. But you just have to slow them down. That's the first thing. Because if you run around every time they snap their finger, again, guilty. My first 2 years, before someone was even a client, they snapped their fingers and I'm out the door. Oh, let me go show the house. Let me go do this. Let me go run around. And every time I leave my house, that costs me money.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to leave my house, there needs to be a good reason to do that. So that's kind of the gist of that.
That's interesting. I put out on Facebook this week where I wanted to start shining people's shoes. And I thought I do not want to be the person whose whole persona is built on like being super smiley and super friendly. Like I want to offer something of substance, which is shining shoes.
Yeah.
And I'll pick them up when I can. And all this extra super nice sugary stuff, like it's really not necessary.
It's not necessary.
I just felt like it was because I was on the bottom of the
Mm-hmm.
the chain for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's more helpful there, but even then it's not necessary if you have substance and something to offer. And I ended up feeling like kind of an asshole for being too friendly and too servile when it didn't need to be. And it sounds
100%.
like
I was guilty of that, and I'm still learning. I learn every day, but definitely, if you make yourself too available, people will take that kindness for weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're getting phone calls at 11:30.
yeah, I bet they don't. A lot of them don't even mean to. They just get people sense how far they can expand with you, and if there's an opening, they
push further. Yeah,
really.
And then you get upset at them because I've done it. I get upset, and my home life suffers because I'm doing everything for the client, and then the client doesn't even end up doing anything. Or doesn't do.
And then you really feel like an asshole.
Then you really feel like an asshole because then you're like, wait a minute, I just gave up, time with my kids, time with my wife, time doing whatever, training, something I want to do, read a book, and I give that up to be available to this person, and they just take advantage. And so I've noticed that the more standard you actually set, and the more value you're able to show, people take you way more serious. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be nice. And so one of the things that we've been working on with a partner of mine is expired listings. So people that put their home on the market, they try to sell it, and for whatever reason it doesn't sell. And we actually come in, instead of being the good guy, calling them, we have turned into the bad guy now. That gives them everything, just factual information. Mm-hmm. And if they don't want to take that, hey, no problem. We don't have to work together. And you almost take it away from them. It's kind of like a reverse psychology. Yeah. You take it away from them, and they come calling back. Like, wait a minute. Oh, what was that thing you said?
It sounds like you went from being like the nice guy to the bad boy.
Yeah, which and I didn't want to really go that way. I thought being nice and friendly was the way to do it, but apparently not.
I'm tired of playing that role in life. Period.
Yeah, and we talked about this. Man, when was the first time we got together? A good 2 years ago.
Yeah. Speaking of which, it was April 2022. When we first recorded one of these.
So solid 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a lot has changed. A lot has stayed the same for sure. I have the same values and everything like that, but really, we took a step back in 2024 to really develop systems to move forward. Because again, going back to just transaction, you can't just you have to create a business. You can't just go off of one transaction and then you never know where the next one's going to come from. And that's why when the call does come, you're so available and just ready to go, and people sense it. Like, oh, this guy hasn't had a sale, or he wants to make the money, so he'll do anything I tell him to, basically.
Let me pause it right there and kind of insert something, because I wanted to go over like the 2 years that we had this podcast relationship and actual friendship. So it was about April 2022 that we first recorded that podcast in the parking garage.
Yeah.
And not a lot on the surface has changed, but one big, there have been changes, but they're things I would have to describe. It's not like I went from my size to your size, or I got a tattoo or something.
Yeah.
I would say they're more changes of habit, changes of attitude, and practice.
Well, I just see I see consistency with you now. I see more confidence now. You're not just kind of a lost soul floating through. That's kind of how I felt at the beginning. You were kind of lost. You didn't know what you were going to do, what the next step is. Not that we have it all figured out today, by any means.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, like, where's my little notebook here? Just to have some points of reference between now and then. Like, to bring it back to the thread we've been following, which is real estate. What were you as a real estate agent then? Like, personally, like, what were the changes of character that you had to go through from then till now? Like, you say back then you were, they snap and you go show them the house.
They snap and I jump, just Mr. Nice Guy overall, Mr. Nice Guy. And again, a lot of it was, I was trying to just do as much business as I could, trying to be in as many deals as I could be, just to learn. So part of it was that. But then, then I realized, okay, this isn't going to work. I'll go crazy. You'll lose your mind. And that's why so many people burn out. Because, you might work hard for 2 weeks and then you tell yourself, okay, I need a day for myself. Well, then that's the day that the call comes. So what do? You're kind of at a crossroad.
What do you do? Well, what did you do then, and what do you do now?
Well, what I did then is I drop everything I'm doing. And I might have something else that's productive or financially beneficial to me in my business, or me and my family, or whatever else. Well, I would drop everything I'm doing and show up, and then the house would suffer. And so, but if you come home and your home is not a place of solitude, a place of peace, well, then your business life is going to suffer too eventually. It might not be right away. It might take a year. It might take 5. But it will suffer. And so now I've got systems in place where we've hired on some people to where sometimes little paperwork things that, you have to get back into your office. You got to take a look at it all over again. Well, now we've got people in place that take a look at that for us, and we just oversee it. Nothing's really an emergency. If it's an emergency, you call 911, right?
So it sounds like back then, you were describing one almost nervous person, like, yes, okay,
yes.
Whereas now it's like the call comes in and it gets.
Yeah, there's a system and there's process, and again, 2024 we took a step back, so I wasn't as active in actual sales, and we kind of knew that when the rates went up, when the market was turning. That's when I made the decision with the partner of mine, and we said, you know what? Let's really just sit down. Let's build some things. Let's practice. Let's train. Let's figure some things out, so that when this market does turn, because it goes up and down all the time, let's go in with systems and processes in place that we can duplicate. That's the biggest thing, because you might have a successful deal, and then the next one is a complete nightmare, and we're always wondering, well, what happened? What went differently there?
Let me write off of that too, because that's very applicable to really any goals, is systematizing it. Because when you go from 1 week to the next and you think, like, I want to get bigger, just to throw out a goal.
Yeah.
You go to the gym a few times that week, you eat more that week, and at the end of that week you're like, I feel better, but like you don't have any objective, measurable measure to say whether you really were doing better that week or not. So, like I've been, you know, I got the planner. Me and Greg are the portfolio planner boys, and
well, the planners have been. I mean, those have been lifesavers, and so kind of a funny thing too. I bought one for my partner too. I was like, look, we're going to be using these planners this year.
I got a portfolio for Mike. Not a planner, but I got him a little thing in case he ever wants to do that. But like one of my goals is to drink less. Yeah. So when I first started, I'm like, I'm not going to say I'm not going to drink at all. I just want to see how many days a month I'm drinking. So
because when you say drink less, right? Like getting bigger.
What is less? Is that less? Like one bottle, or is that like how many ounces?
Is that one? Yeah.
So
I just one shot.
I just decided I'm not gonna try to do anything this first month. I'm just gonna see how much I'm drinking. So it was probably, I think it was March I started. No, it was April where I first kept track, and I circled every day on the calendar I had to drink. So if I had one sip of beer,
that counts.
That counts. And so I had a number that month, and then I had one the next month. I'm like, okay, now that I have X, I'm gonna try to do X minus 3. That's gonna be my goal for the month.
Yeah.
And some of them went up and down, but I've never gone back to as much drinking as I was
to the baseline month of April, right?
And I'm not gonna say exactly how much because I'm a little embarrassed.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But I now know I am drinking less. I feel like I'm drinking less, but I know exactly how much I'm drinking less. And right now I'm just like on a dry streak going into the new year, and I'm not. I mean, maybe I'll just go dry completely. Maybe I'll just do every weekend or whatever. Yeah. But having some record.
Yep.
You call it systems. One thing I like to emphasize is just records. How many days did I drink? How many days did I do calligraphy in a row? How many days did I meditate? That's another thing. I always wanted to do meditation more. I went a year where I meditated every day, and then after that, I kind of just, it was sporadic, and then I've been sporadic this year.
And did you feel the difference?
That year, no, because it became a practice of anxiety. It's like I would sit down for 10 minutes, and that was almost like an appointment I made to worry about things.
Yeah.
That's where my anxieties would attack me. Now I've got more of a bit, I don't know, I'm just a little older, and I feel like I'm more immune to certain anxieties. But I have one, instead of little circles on the days, I have little diamonds I draw. So I can say on this day, I meditated once. On this day, I meditated twice, and I've been on a streak of doing it in the morning, in the evening, and I can see. And I like this, whether it's like drinking less, meditating, or going to the gym. You have like a little, almost like a little rosary of beads throughout the calendar, and your progress is visible.
Yeah.
It's not just a feeling which can change. Like, if you're in a bad mood one day, you think your whole life is shit. But if you have it written down, that number doesn't change based on your mood, and it kind of does stabilize you a little bit more.
That's the big one too, is the number not changing on your mood. So same thing, because the whole, New Year's, well, this is fitting, right? New Year's resolutions and all that stuff, right? Oh, I'm so motivated, and that's what most people, you go to the gym January 1st. Well, January 1st probably closed, but those first few weeks of January, that gym is packed.
Yes.
People you've never seen before, and I wish them all the best and successes in their life and all that. But how many of them fall off by the second week, the third week, the second month, the third month?
Yeah.
They fall off because it doesn't really become a real habit, or they might go to the gym, and that's a common misconception too. You go to the gym, you work out 4 hours one day, and then the next day you're so sore, you don't go the next day. You don't go for 3 days. Then it turns into 2 weeks. Then you have some more drinks. Then you're worse off than you were.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me of something that you told me, and there's an equivalent saying. So your advice was about the market.
Yeah.
Don't time the market. It's not timing the market. It's time in the market.
Yeah, time in the market.
And there's a saying in art: trust the process.
Yeah.
So the equivalent is that, like, you're putting time in, you're putting reps
Yeah.
in, you're practicing your techniques, and if you just keep doing that, you will get a good outcome eventually.
Yep.
And that outcome is more consistently going to be good if you keep on working the process.
And it'll be a
just
stronger
like,
outcome.
Just like with in the market, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
No, but it's very.
I trust you that.
It's very similar. It compounds. So it's the compound effect of that too. Because if you've got all these little diamonds, X's, and circles, right, it compounds over time. So you're just getting a little bit better every day, just a little bit better. Because you can't make the jump. Again, you go to the gym for 10 hours in one day, it's not going to do anything. All you're going to do is you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, you're trying to make a masterpiece in one day.
But if you do 10 workouts,
impossible.
10 30-minute workouts even, and just stick to your diet and do that, you're going to have much better results than one 10-hour workout. It's the same thing. You might do calligraphy one day, all day, spend all day. I would argue you're going to get worse than if you did it consistently. Because you're just going to get burnt out and wear your hand out.
And just for a practical tip, I wanted to just get better at calligraphy, so I decided I had to institutionalize it. Yeah. So this planner is an institution. I refer to it every day.
Well,
so I decided
you've got calligraphy on every single day there.
I decided every day in the morning I write down Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in copper plate, just with my pencil, nothing fancy. And at the end of the day I just write Amen, as if it was a prayer. So at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, I do calligraphy. It's very little, but it is more than I would have done otherwise.
Yeah.
It would have been once a week, once every 2 weeks.
And
it's so much more than zero, which is basically what it would have been before.
And it's the same. And again, whether it's calligraphy, whether it's a workout, whether it's meditation, whether it's in real estate, for us it's calls. That's the big one. I had such call reluctance when I first started, and I mean, I had all the data, I had everything, I knew what I was doing. Wouldn't pick up the phone, and just I would sit there and I would look at it. Wouldn't pick up the phone, and these people don't bite. And a lot of the people that we call, I had to frame it a different way. I mean, yeah, a lot of them cuss us out, but again, they might be going through some personal things in their life, and every time I call a person, especially one that I don't know, I'm interrupting their day, regardless of what it is. Because that's another thing that like the new guys will call me and they say, "Well, what time should I call people?" Well, anytime.
They're all bad times.
They're all bad times. Every time's a bad time, and they're always shocked by my answer. Well, so what do we do? I'm like, well, you don't have to call them. What do you mean? Well, you want to get paid? Then you got to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a form of rejection, even if it's a slight rejection, because again, we're interrupting their day. Now, we dealt with a lot with for sale by owners, so people that are trying to sell their home on their own. Those people, that's like the way we kind of framed it with my partner that made us feel better is it's as if a Democrat was calling a Republican or a Republican calling a Democrat and trying to shift their whole worldview on one phone call without having any rapport with them, not knowing them. You're never gonna do that. And so what my partner what he brought up from his years of experience was, look, all you're trying to do is win that call. You're never going to win an appointment on that first call. Rarely. You're never going to win a sale on the first call. You're just trying to win the call. Just try to keep the conversation going. We have certain questions that we ask to try to, position them if they're even a viable candidate for us for the future, and then we go from there. And then, from for sale by owners, we're doing the expireds, and those are kind of hit and miss, because some of them, they're going to relist their home with the same agent. No problem.
I think it's a good exercise, like if it's sales or anything else, like you say your answer was like, oh, what if it's a bad time? It's like, well, it's always a bad time. It's a good mental reframing to think like, not what if it's bad, not what if it's slightly bad, like just say like, okay, what if it's the worst case scenario?
Yeah. Like,
this guy is not only is it inconvenient, he actually just had a really bad experience with a realtor. Like, just assume that. It's like, what are you going to do then? It's like, okay, develop that skill set. Or, let's say, all of these disciplines, these skills, calligraphy, weightlifting, martial arts, they are only valid if they work at the extremities. Like, I'm just as good as a black belt walking down the street you can only tell the difference when somebody tries
Yeah.
to beat you up.
Yeah.
And like if you're a
Exactly.
salesman, like I'm just as good a salesman as you until we both start making the
Yeah.
100 phone calls, you know.
Yeah, until you engage with the actual attacker or prospect.
Yeah,
or,
and if whatever you're practicing only works in the most
yeah.
ideal, tranquil state, I mean, what good is it?
Well,
It
once
has-
the military has that saying, right? You fall to your highest level of training or something like that.
Oh yeah.
So whatever your highest level of training is, when everything else is collapsing around you, you fall down to that training.
Yeah.
And that's all you come down to. And so the more you train, the more you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's your bottom. And so the idea of being consistent is trying to lift that bottom up,
Yeah.
so that when the chaos ensues, now you're here. Versus before 2 years ago, something would happen, and I'd have pretty much a mental breakdown. I wouldn't show it with the client. I was always pretty poised with that. But then as soon as that phone hung up or I left, I'm freaking out, and just didn't know how to handle it. And that kind of goes back to that. It doesn't matter what your mood is. You have to get it done. It doesn't matter if you're motivated. Motivation, it's just an emotion. Like, it just lasts for a second. You get all pumped up. Oh, I'm going to go out there and do all this. Well, that's just not how it works. Because then you're going to
absolutely
a door's going to close in your face, and then your motivation's going to fade.
Yeah.
It's discipline versus motivation. You got to be disciplined to just continue on when everything else is failing.